build the system once, get paid on it forever.
And that's a great phrase. Should we say that again?
Build the system once, get paid on it forever.
So Andy, you've been speaking to our audience here at the Dealmakers VIP Retreat in Marbella, and you've been telling them how to grow their business and how to run the business once they've bought it and how to make the very best out of that investment. Give us some key takeaways. If there was one thing that you wanted to get across to our YouTube audience, what would that be?
I think from an acquisition point of view, the landscape of small to medium-sized businesses, we might walk into them thinking we're going to buy a finished product ostensibly. That's very rarely the case in my experience. So we make an acquisition. Obviously, we want to achieve return on investment and make sure that acquisition is stable enough to repay the financing and all that goes with that, and then give us a tidy return on investment for our own purposes as well. So I think the main thing is to ask good questions about what the environment is in the business. In other words, I gave 9 things to consider this morning with regard to systemizing the business. What's missing? Because there are your opportunities to really start to accelerate and gain some traction in terms of that growth and return on investment.
So give me an example of something that might be missing that as a business buyer you could see as a future opportunity.
So I think largely a lot of small to medium-sized business owners rely on the best intentions of their team to come and do a good job. So what's missing is clear processes. The businesses don't usually own the processes. Their team bring their processes to the business with them, and then the business owner lets them use them. So we don't really get that consistency of customer journey in the business, and as such there's a great opportunity there to create that system to create a much tidier customer experience, much more comprehensible and aligned customer experience in that business, so customers understand it better, get a consistent service, and therefore come back, and repeat business is profit, isn't it?
So I know that you referenced the E-Myth by Michael Gerber, classics, been around at least 30 years now. Most people, though, watching this won't have read it.
Yes.
Just explain how the Emth Principle works once you've bought a business. What should you be doing differently?
I think most people, when they look at a business, tend to look at the effects of what's going on. And really, there's a better question, which is about the causes of what's going on. It's very easy to notice the effects because they are more noticeable. It's more difficult to get to the causes. Now, the premises in the E-Myth are, number one, the systems run the business and the people run the systems. So I call it wriggle room, actually, with a lot of these businesses. People are coming in with best intentions, using their own processes. The E-Myth says that actually, to bring value to the business and create clarity, introduce systems into the business early on, because it tells people what a great day looks like. And why wouldn't you want to do that? I always use McDonald's as an example, and I think it's a good example because the value in that business is in the systems. It starts with no people. Buy a McDonald's franchise, you buy a book.
It's an operating manual, isn't it? Yeah.
And so then you hire the people with great attitude to operate the operating manual.
Yes.
And the value is in the processes and then the people. So always look to the system first. If something isn't working as it should be, look to the system and then the training and lastly the person.
And is it not fair to say that most businesses don't have any systems at all? So it's basically, it's a group of people who make it up as they go along. Yep. It's slightly different every time. And I had this years ago. I sat down my customer service team and I said, what happens from the moment someone first inquires on the website to becoming a client? And the first person told me what they thought happened. Second person told me what they thought happened, and everyone told me, and it was a different story every time.
Yes.
So creating that consistent system then remains regardless of that person quitting, that person going on maternity leave, and so forth.
That's right. Build the system once, get paid on it forever.
And that's a great phrase. Should we say that again?
Absolutely. Build the system once, get paid on it forever.
You're watching this video because you've got some level of interest in buying a business. That's great. Let's get you started. I've got something brand new. It's free of charge. It's called the Business Buying Toolkit, and there's a link to get it in the video description below.
I always talk to clients and say, we're not here to put band-aids on stuff. We're here to stop the cut. And if we think about what's causing the cuts in the business, then less band-aids are required. So I think that for me would be front and centre of the opportunity here.
So let's put this into the business buying context. So if you're buying a business that doesn't have systems and processes and procedures, there is an opportunity there. But if you're buying a business that does have systems, processes and procedures, then first of all, if you've got a seller who understands that, then there is definitely a value attached to that.
Yes.
If they don't necessarily place a value on that, then you're getting yourself a business that really can and really should operate without you. Otherwise, you're just buying a job.
Yes, very much so. So the converse opportunity is if those systems don't exist, then you probably are buying a job. So the valuation multiple you're looking at should probably be lower.
So is it fair to say that most small businesses are actually jobs created around the skill set of the owner?
Yes, absolutely. And that can be the reason for exiting many of the small businesses, isn't it? Because if they've still got their Superman cape strapped on, let's say, so customers still want to speak with them, for example, and there's plenty of examples of that around, at some point they stop being excited about growth.
Right. Oh, because they don't want the growth, because it just creates more work for them. Yeah. And most owners hate the idea of interviewing, recruiting, making the mistake, firing. So therefore they don't recruit, so they make it all about them. So really it's a glorified job, and sometimes not a very well paid job.
The mindset shift to take somebody out of, which was the right mentality to start the business, I'm the best at. That can't be the mentality going forwards, because that will lead to a certain type of behaviour. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it, I suppose, because if the business is heavily reliant on the owner, then you need to make sure that you've tied them in whilst you systemise the business, but for buying it for probably a lower value. And if it operates without them, then you're probably going to pay more for it, but there's probably a better opportunity to scale.
Well, this is the thing. Do you buy a business that requires lots of work, or do you buy a business that's already doing well? Well, private equity, and we're talking about mainstream private equity here rather than the special situations distressed private equity, they want well-run businesses with well-formed management teams, with systems, processes and procedures. They can put their own people in, move people around, and it's not dependent upon that entrepreneurial brain box who started it all. Once they're gone, it still needs to work just as well.
Very much so. And I think I'd cycle back round to the E-Myth there, Jonathan, really, because he talks about abdication and delegation. So we have to be cognizant of that, I think, when we do acquire a business, because buying a business and expecting it to work, well, part of our due diligence is not just the numbers, but how does it actually work? If the systems aren't in place, then that would be abdication. So we're going to have to expect to do some work to get that business to work without us and without the original owner. And that would be fair enough. So it's not like we can just sit back and expect everything to be rosy in the garden. At the other end, and that's why we pay a higher multiple for it, isn't it? If we are buying a business that works without, then probably still the same amount of due diligence to do, because we have to make sure it does, but probably going to be a bit of an easier life.
I'm interrupting this video to tell you about my most amazing lawyer. His name is John Andrews. You need an outstanding lawyer to get your deal done, so why don't you use mine? His details are on the screen. When he reached heads of terms, send him a message and he'll be able to help you get the deal done. And I suppose the bottom line is, if you're not using your own money, why don't you pay more to get the better business and have the easier life, rather than doing it a little bit on the cheap, buying the cheap business, but then just having a problem that keeps you awake at night?
I would say that's absolutely right, because at the end of the day, there's a reason that business has got to the place it's got to, and the owner wants to get out.
Yes.
Because that's, they probably didn't go into business with the idea of exiting for a couple of $100,000, did they?
No, they didn't. I always find that the businesses where the owners have made good money along the way sell for more reasonable amounts, and the businesses where the owner hasn't really made much money and they've tied up all their hope in that exit, and they see that exit as their huge value creation, not realizing that the previous few years are really where the value should have been created. So everyone's been listening to you today. They've had a great session, by the way. So what do you think is the one takeaway that you wanted everyone to have? What have they walked out of the room with today?
A couple of stages in this journey, isn't there? First of all, acquire the business. Now, what am I going to do with it? So what I really wanted to provide them with was a very simplified way to evaluate what's actually happening in a business, and then some frameworks to go fix it. So I would hope that everybody's taken something away where they can identify an opportunity to create some traction faster as a result of what I've talked about this morning.